What will happen if we combine Quake and the Soviet Union? A new first-person shooter made in the style of the cult retro games of the 90s. According to the plot, we find ourselves in a socialist country adjacent to the Czech Republic in 1986, in which a terrible and unknown catastrophe occurred, from which truly dark and difficult times begin for the country. Our silent protagonist must confront crowds of faceless opponents in gas masks in order to find out the true truth and free his native land from invaders. In addition to the hammer and sickle in our not that rich, but diverse for combining tactics in the arsenal, a pistol, a shotgun, a machine gun, a rocket launcher, add to this the underbarrel grenades, and get the most dynamic and complex gameplay, forcing you to be in constant motion and not stop for a minute. The levels are built so that you can't just sit in hiding, you are constantly being forced to act, and not stand in one place. According to the author, all game locations are transferred from real life. What else? It adds more realism and a sense of déjà vu to the post-Soviet architectural heritage, with their inherent attributes, monuments, slogans, flags, and banners. With aesthetics and entourage, we hit exactly the spot. Tense, oppressive ambient on the background, gray-brown gamma really creates a sense of anxiety, despair and loneliness, because there are no living NPCs or friendly characters, like dialogues and cutscenes. But even without them, the interest does not fade for a second. Enemies are waiting for you at every turn, and even some brief moments of respite are filled with anxiety, because you never know what is behind the next turn. Sometimes, for rest and variety, we are given a short ride on a small scooter. It is unclear of course why. You can't push and shoot from it, but the gameplay of course dilutes and gives you a chance to catch your breath. The gameplay itself is quite simple. We shoot back from crowds of seemingly identical opponents, find keys, passages, and move from point A to point B. It sounds very simple, but in fact, the passages hidden from prying eyes and the keys to them still need to be found, which is not always easy, and obviously, at first I was stupid and I can't for 5 minutes to understand where to go next, until I noticed a window in the toilet with a further passage. From the point of view of design and levels, this is a typical retro shooter from the 90s, with a number of confusing levels, secrets, which make up most of the charm and old-school spirit of the game. Modern shooters have long abandoned the old conventions, and exploit dull realism with might and main, with simple and straight as a stick levels, otherwise God forbid the player will get lost somewhere or get bored. Of course, because of this, most of the charm of the game disappears when there are no secrets of riddles, hidden and secret passages, hiding places, hidden weapons in it. Because of this, excitement and interest disappear, because there is no need to explore these levels to dig, run in different directions feeling like a pioneer, getting joy and reward for your time and effort spent. Now only small indie projects inspired by the old style can boast of the old era, because large budget games do not like risks and experiments, which is why they stand in one place from year to year, and are unable to cause new or positive emotions. If, like me, you are tired of this total stagnation and monotony, the lack of new ideas, and the souls of old games, welcome to indie games. Just don't play bagels and platformers, so as not to discourage yourself from exploring as it was with me. In terms of locations, Krot is as diverse as possible. In the half hour that I'm in I spent it, I visited an abandoned subway, an old factory, a forgotten cafe, destroyed a reservoir, a dilapidated amusement park, in several bunkers, warehouses and subways, which personally gave me a sense of the scale of the game itself and its world, especially in comparison with modern games, where they make an empty open the world or one monotonous gut, which does not change in any way after passing. Although the locations of the game are very narrow and small, which causes a sense of enclosed space, there are no large open spaces, so there is nowhere to feel safe. What I love and appreciate about old games is that developers didn't soar before logic and realism. They did what they wanted without fear of criticism and bad reviews. Remember the same Painkiller, where each level is not like the other, as if taken from another game. This is what creates diversity and interest, which is above silly conventions. Also, do not think that Roth is a simple and primitive game like it may seem at first glance. Even at the average difficulty level of 7, the game gives you a light and challenges, shaking a lot of nerves. There are few killock here, there are even fewer cartridges. They have run out cartridges on a shotgun and a pistol. Run and look for them yourself. No one will prompt and help you. The armor breaks down quickly and weakly protects, God willing, save for a couple of shootouts. New opponents appear from level to level, and the old ones learn new techniques. If at the beginning they just run and die alone, then passing on they attack in droves, wait in narrow passages, hide behind their comrades, throw bombs, try to set fire to, and catch up with you wherever you go. It was not easy for me to pass. Every second I could not relax and kept my finger on the pulse, and a fight with 4 or more opponents required instant reaction and micro-control. If you run out into the crowd, immediately death. What teaches the player to combine weapons, come up with tactics, smoke one at a time, trick someone in a batch, or simply run away if you are caught off guard in a tiny corridor. I would attribute the lack of bosses as such to the minuses, which personally upset me a lot. The main highlight of any old-school shooter is interesting, unusual and colorful bosses that were most remembered and created a sense of real threat. Remember the Necrogiant, the Nihilant, the Cyberdemon. To win, they required more than a dozen efforts and perseverance. They challenged the player. The only boss in the Wrath that I found, this monkey towards the end, which I did not immediately discover, due to its merging with the background, is very realistic and original. We have a kind of post-apocalypse here, a terrible catastrophe, the world is on the verge of destruction, and they give us a monkey instead of a sensible and interesting boss. Thank you, though it wouldn't be like this and not like this Manus and the monkey sentinel from Sekiro, otherwise I would have had a heart attack again. However, I was completely delighted with the game, especially considering that for the last year I considered myself deprived because of the inability to play Doom Eternal. Who would have thought that a simple indie game made by one person, it will give me more emotions and impressions than all the big budget shooters of recent years. The main thing, guys, is the soul, the idea, the thought and the message which you want to say with your work, and not the amount of hype, money, and connections. Surely the author of this game wanted to reflect and tell us about the beginning of hard and dark days for the citizens of the socialist bloc at the time of the collapse of the Union. At one point left without help, support and faith in the future. Pretty good, huh? Considering that the whole game is done exclusively by one person. So far, it is in the public domain and only 3 levels are available, but the author promises soon to release the full version. You can all get acquainted with Wrath by clicking on the link in the description. Be sure to write what you think about this game, what you liked, what scared you off, and if you want to plunge into nostalgia for the games of your childhood, then it's the right time for this. It's better to try it yourself one time than to hear it 1,000 times. All bye.